When we talk about healing, we often talk about things like breath work, journaling, meditation, or trauma informed therapy. But few talk about the role that substances, yes, even drugs, have played in our survival. We've been conditioned to see drug use as a weakness, a failure of willpower, or a moral problem. But in truth, many of us reached for substances not to escape, but to stay alive. Not in the physical sense always, but emotionally, spiritually, socially. When you live in survival mode, you will use whatever tools are available to soothe the unbearable. There is no such thing as self sabotage. There's only a fragmented, terrified self doing what it can to manage overwhelming inner states. That's what drugs often are: medicine delivered unconsciously. Weed, alcohol, psychedelics, stimulants, even sex. They all have a frequency, they all carry a message. But if you take them in survival mode without reverence, they can amplify the chaos. And that doesn't mean they are bad, it means they're powerful. And like any powerful energy, they must be met in good spirit, with awareness, with presence, without shame. When I moved from Mexico to the US as a teenager, I was completely unequipped for the shock. I was a shy kid who had lived most of my life inside a bedroom, watching TV, sitting beside my mom, and then suddenly I was in a foreign land, disconnected from language, culture, rhythm, and identity. I was overwhelmed. I was ashamed of everything about me: my body, my voice, my accent, my clothes, my presence. I wanted to be invisible, but I also desperately wanted to be seen. And that's a terrifying contradiction to live inside. And then I found weed, or maybe it found me. At the time, I didn't know what it was doing. I just knew it could breathe. I could breathe. That I didn't feel like I had to disappear as much. It softened the sharp edges of a world I didn't know how to survive in. And looking back now, I realize weed didn't damage me. It carried me. It became a sacred buffer while my nervous system recalibrated. Even later in life, during my most recent awakening, I found myself reaching for it again. I was entangled in some emotionally complex and painful dating someone who was married, feeling waves of shame, desire, confusion, and unworthiness. And my body reached for the familiar medicine, the drugs, not to sabotage me, but to protect me. Because part of me was still learning how to hold the intensity of raw emotional truth. Drugs are not the enemy, they are messengers. But they speak clearly only when you are present enough to listen. To let them help you, you must welcome them without judgment. Observe what they bring up in you. Stay conscious through their effects. Know when to bow to them and when to set them down. When you use a substance unconsciously, it becomes a loop. When you use it with reverence, it becomes a teacher. And nervous system healing, can also happen through self-discovery. Every time you meet a fragment with compassion instead of judgment, you send a signal to your nervous system saying it's safe now. You're not alone, you can soften. Self-awareness isn't a luxury, it's a path back to regulation. The more you know yourself, the less you react blindly. The more you witness your impulses, the less control they have. Knowing why you reach for the pipe, the bottle, the pills, that's nervous system work. Because awareness is what transforms reaction into response. So it's about integration, not elimination. You don't have to be sober to be whole, but you do need to be honest. Honest about what substances do for you, what they reveal, what they conceal, what they've carried. You have to honor the drug, but don't worship it. Let it be part of your story, not your escape from it. Because there is no enemy, there's only you in many forms trying to survive, and now you're learning how to live.